And at the end of my first year, I worked out how much I'd earned and how many calls I'd made. And I worked out that every call I made, whether they said yes or no, or didn't answer and I left a voicemail, was worth £4 to me.
Wow.
In 2008, quite a lot of money just for picking up the phone for somebody to say no to you. But the law of averages says that I got enough yeses out of that
Yeah.
to push it forward.
I absolutely love sharing an episode where the guest has never been on a podcast before, because you know that you can hopefully set an expectation for them, but it means that you're getting really fresh feedback, you're getting their story, you're getting their journey before anyone else has ever heard it, and it's just wonderful. This is somebody that I've had the absolute pleasure to get to know in real life, both in the professional and personal context, which if you listen to the episode, you'll hear why I'm not being facetious. This is James Martin, who is a prolific entrepreneur, both within the recruitment space, but also remote hiring and tech as well. So I think he has got a very holistic approach to where we're at as an industry. And hopefully you've clicked on this episode because you're interested to learn more and how it can impact your business or your desk. I hope you'll learn something from today's episode. So without further ado, let's jump in. This is Lysha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And when I invite a guest on who I actually know in real life, in the real world, I get super excited, and I have to calm myself down, because otherwise I get all excited, especially when it's someone who is officially popping their podcast cherry with me. But I think I think he knows he's in safe hands. I think he's a little bit scared, but he knows it's going to be absolutely fine. I'm only joking with you. Without any further ado, I have to introduce to you all today the wonderful James Martin, who is a startup founder and investor. And I have to say, wonderful human being. Welcome to you today, James. How are you?
Thank you very much, Lysha. I thought we were keeping it a secret. It was my podcast cherry.
Oh, no, we're not keeping it a secret. I like revealing, because if I was to add up all the people that have been on over the last 6 seasons, I reckon a good 25% have never been on a podcast before. And I take it as a huge honor that you're choosing my channel to do it on. So you're in very, very safe hands. I forgot to say in a brief introduction that you are also a collector of beautiful trainers. For anyone that's watching on YouTube, you'll see some very nice Nike behind you.
I've got some Nikes in the background. Yeah, absolutely.
Nike's in the background. So there'll be lots of people clicking on to see who you are and what you do. But can you give us your intro as to what I guess your journey has been to reach us at this point, like what you actually do?
So my journey originally started in 2007, right? So a rec to rec, we love a rec to rec, rang me up out the blue and said, have you ever thought about recruitment? And that change in my life from working in a contact center and doing all the things you do in your early 20s, but actually that rec to rec was such a game changer for me, because it got me into the world of recruitment, but actually showed me how it was done. So the guy was prepping me at midnight. He was readying me for interviews, going through what pre-sales, post-sales was. I didn't have a clue about any of that stuff before I went in, but that set the benchmark for why I loved recruitment from
I
day.
love that answer. I don't know. I didn't know you were going to say that. Do you want to say who it is? Can you remember their name?
Yeah,
You don't have
Julian
to.
Salkus. So he's down
Mm,
south. He's got his own agency,
amazing.
and he worked for another company, but he gave it 100%. And at
I
that
love
moment,
that.
I thought, I love the sound of this. Like, if this is what you do with candidates, he's prepping me this way. I can prep candidates that way.
Benchmark.
This is
Benchmark. Love
the
it.
benchmark isn't, are you interested in a job? Off you go. The benchmark is, this is how you get the job.
I love
So
it.
when I went in year one, I had a great first year, joined a company called Robson Taylor. They had 50 people, and I ended
Yeah.
up being top new bizzer in year one.
Oh my God. So that was doing technology sales. Am I right?
Technology sales, pre-sales, nothing technical at that point, kind of evolved
Mm.
into that over the years. Spent a
Mm-hmm.
number of years there, learned my craft, learned my trade. I think it was maybe 6, 7 years I spent sort of doing that with those guys. Then I went off, did my own thing for a little bit of property, and then ended up with a startup, small company, and grew with them from 3 to sort of 20, 25 people.
Wow.
Again, top biller year on year. The odd year somebody come in and beat me, and that just set me on a path for what do you go and do next? How do I bring this title home? And at some point during that journey, I said, I've got to go and do this for myself. I've got to go and set up a recruitment
Mm-hmm.
company, which I did. And it it was tough. You know, the markets are tough in tech, and we went through huge growth phases.
Mm,
But at some point during that journey, I realized that there's another way, and that's not necessarily UK recruitment. There's potentially a different way of doing things, which is where we came to outsourcing, which is a
mhm,
little bit of my career background. I know we don't like to talk about outsourcing, it's remote hiring and all of these things, but in essence,
mm,
that's what we refer back to. But this journey has kind of taught me that there is another way to recruit, there is another way of doing things.
mm.
And it's all about finding talent rather than where it is,
Okay.
about the person rather than the place. And that
Yeah.
mindset I got a few years ago, and that's kind of where Flink has been born. So now I run Flink remotely, which is a South African based out offshore organization
Yep.
bringing remote talent from, at the moment, South Africa, but it will be all over the world at some point,
Hmm.
to organizations that are looking for something a little bit different, that are going against the status quo.
Going against the status quo. And ultimately, what you're doing is you're effectively reading the room, aren't you? Because this is, from a globalization point of view, the quest for talent has never been more challenging. And there's no reason for people to need to be sat in an office, you know? There's
There
just,
isn't,
you're just
and
limiting.
you're limiting everything. If I look at my own journey where I've had big offices, you know, with recruitment
Yeah.
companies, and you're spending tens of thousands, if not
Oh my
more, every
gosh.
single month on a desk space with Wi-Fi, just so everybody's in the same space. I
Yeah.
mean, we hate mentioning COVID, but I think COVID taught us that you don't have to
Mm,
do it that way.
no.
And as long as the employee is engaged, why do they need to be sat next to you?
Yeah, and, it's in fact, we first met, I think, when you were in that very nice shiny office, and I've always been a huge advocate for, for some people that is the right way, but you are also limiting yourself as an employer in terms of opportunity, but also potentially putting a, stranglehold around your neck when the market does go tough again. You've got all these costs, and you see it all too often, don't you? So Flink was born. So this is a remote business which is providing remote hiring, remote talent for any particular industry, or do you have a niche?
So actually, it's across all industries, but we do
Okay.
have a bit of a niche within the recruitment space. So if you think about
Hmm.
180s, 360s,
Yeah,
CV sources, marketing, admin, they're all the kind of roles that come quite naturally to this because the market is quite well evolved in South Africa
it
already.
is. Yeah.
So you're getting candidates that have got experience in these sectors. They're not coming in fresh. But if you look at the wider operations of a recruitment business as well, you've got your ops people, your HR people. If the role doesn't have to be tied to a desk, why should it be?
Why should it be?
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah, the only things we don't do is, you need a construction worker on site. Well, that's not going to work from
No.
South Africa. So
No.
it's anything that can be remote within
Yeah.
any type of business. But recruitment,
Mm,
because it's my background, we have centered down on that a little bit over the last couple of
mm.
years. We've got absolutely clients outside of there, but it is a big area of focus and where people see a lot of results.
Mm. And from a cultural perspective, I think it's been a theme in the last few episodes that I've recorded with some other founders who are actually, utilizing the remote hiring model, not for all their roles, but specifically around research, headhunting, developing the talent pools. And the general consensus is that the reason South Africa is attractive is the time zone is not so dissimilar, but just in terms of culture and perspective around
And
people that
language,
you're then.
language, it's, the way that they
Mm,
talk, the way they interact. They're used to working with UK people,
mm,
US people,
mm.
and the work ethic is like second to none.
Second to none.
I, I,
Mm,
I don't want to downplay UK recruiters because obviously we're great, right?
no.
I'm
Yeah.
one of them. But ultimately,
Everyone's gonna start switching off here.
but ultimately, there's a point where, and business owners will find this, where they want to stop making the cold calls. They want to stop putting in
Mm,
the hard yards that got them to where they are. But we don't see that in South Africa. We see that if you set a target of 100 calls a day or 8 CVs a week or whatever the number is in your,
yeah.
whether it's high volume or whether it's targeted, they go after the number and they hit it relentlessly because the job is really important to them.
Yeah.
You've got unemployment rates at 30 odd percent. That's the official figure. In youth, it's
Okay.
in youth, in under 25, it's almost 70%.
Oh
That's the
gosh.
official figures coming from the government. If you actually look into it, it's much higher than that. So if they get a job, they want to keep it. So they work,
Wow.
I'm not going to say 10 times harder. That's just a throw out number. They
Yeah,
work
yeah.
harder, they're more committed, they drive harder when times get tough. Just in my
Mm,
experience, nearly 20
mm,
years, that's
mm,
how I've found things.
mm. Wow. So are there any people listening that maybe shouldn't consider this option? Does it suit everybody's model, do you think?
It doesn't suit everybody.
Mm,
If you want to hold hands all the way through the process and you love that they're in the office, you're having a bit of banter, you're going out, you're having drinks after work. Obviously, South Africa isn't going to work for you.
no, no.
And if you don't commit to your staff, and what I mean by that is you don't put dedicated training programs in place, you don't have the daily check-ins to start with, the weeklies, the monthlies. If you just want a fully set recruiter who's going to solve all of your problems without you doing anything, that isn't going to work.
Right.
If you want to work with people, if you want to, develop them as one of your
Mm,
employees, that's where really the people thrive.
mm. So in terms of where it can go wrong, where have you seen sort of examples of what you would use as an example of how not to do something?
Yeah, we had one of these, as you might expect. We gave them a script, we put them on a dialer, and they didn't return any results.
Oh,
What training did you give? Well, I gave them a script. Okay. Did you talk to them about what the business does, how it delivers it, what the USPs are? Well, that isn't their job. Well, I get that, but without a wider understanding of how the business operates, what it does, how it delivers it, and also catching up with them on the daily, on the metrics, and are they working? What tweaks
yeah,
do you make? That
yeah.
script might not sound like them.
Mm,
Their South African tone or
mm,
accent, if you give them a word for word script, as we would say in the UK, that might come across as really rigid for them.
yeah.
If you don't
Not
make,
very authentic. It's
if
going to
you,
sound like a robot.
exactly, if you don't adapt it, and you find this in the UK, right? But I think it's particularly prevalent over there. If you don't work with them, it
Mm.
doesn't work at all.
So,
Um,
ensuring that the onboarding and training is just as important in terms of, for example, there the glaring thing, obvious thing that's missing is features and benefits of this or whatever it was they were selling, whether it's
Yeah.
service or
I think
product.
I think it's more important. I think onboarding
Mm,
South African in the right way and in a
mm,
structured fashion is probably more
mm,
important in the UK because they're not sat there next to you where they can say, "Oh, what about this and what about that?" Yeah, they can reach out on the usual channels
mm.
and telephone, but ultimately, it's that first phase that sets the tone for
Of
what
course
moves.
it does.
And
I
if you
mean, that's immovable for anybody starting a role, right? Regardless of where they are and what they do.
100%. But I think what happened in that case is right. We're bringing in a team of South African researchers or CV sources.
Mm,
They're going to just deliver,
right.
24 CVs every candidate every week, but without
Mm,
training that sits behind it,
mm,
they're destined for failure.
mm. If you've got clients that are considering this, i.e., their culture befits something that's more remote rather than a tangible person sat physically with them wherever they may be based, where does AI and automation fit into this in terms of creating an agent that can potentially do some of the resourcing or do the initial first interviews? Like where do you see that already happening in terms of have you got a business that does that co-currently to what you're offering as remote hiring?
So, from an AI perspective instead of a human perspective,
Yes.
from my perspective, that hasn't been nailed yet. Having been on the
Okay.
receiving end of a few of these calls and tried out a number of vendors.
Oh, go on. You've been on the just let me pause. You've been on the receiving end. How's it gone? Because not many people have yet.
Oh, really? Yeah, I've received,
Mm,
I think, two calls over the last 3 or 4 months that you can tell are automated. They're engaged but not engaged. You can
right.
tell
What were
by
they selling you?
recruitment jobs.
Oh,
So there are recruitment agencies out there using this.
they are.
I have to be honest, because they were selling me, recruitment consultant roles, I
Mm,
wasn't necessarily interested in order to bring that conversation to conclusion. So I can't
yeah.
full overview. But I think the personal aspect is still there in recruitment. I think that people still want
Mm,
to speak to people.
I
We
agree.
we've got the new AI RPS system on LinkedIn, automated questions. Personally, that's a switch off for me. I don't use those tools. It's for some people, it's not for everyone. I would
Yeah,
rather,
yeah, agreed.
out an opportunity, I would rather have a conversation with a human being.
Yeah.
I think in terms of getting that volume of calls out, that's where I think the UK market has pulled away a little bit.
Hmm.
We're very email centric. We're very in mail. They cost £14 each now, by the way. I'm not going to sit
I
here
know.
and LinkedIn, but that is an insane 600% rise in the cost of in-mails.
It's
Craziness.
ludicrous, isn't it? I know there were at my in-person event for women in recruitment leadership in January. It was one of the biggest contentious comments that was made, like, "What on earth? What are they doing? They're deliberately they very soon you're going to have to pay to even have the basic account, aren't you? You're not going to have
Uh,
access to anything."
They're doing that on Facebook, by the way. I got the notification last night. Do I want to pay £3.99 a month not to have ads? But it's all coming, right? They're all
Yeah,
they're all linked.
yeah. Well, Netflix is already doing it. Prime's already doing it.
But
If you
ultimately, would you rather pay for 4 in-mails or have a individual on the phone calling out 70, 80 people a day and making a personal connection? For me, that's still a bit of a no-brainer.
I would like to think that most of our audience would also answer no brainer, but there might be the odd person that doesn't. And do you know what? Each to their own. That's all I can say about it. So, in terms of, from I guess, a leadership perspective, given that our listeners, we know that a lot of you are doing the job day to day. We're not here to say to you that your job's at risk if you are, in the industry, doing a great job. So, I guess that's my caveat. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that. We're not here to say there's no job creation for recruiters.
No, I think this is like an addition to
Good.
recruiters that we've got. By no means would I suggest that anybody go out and replace your entire team. But
Good.
what your top billers do best is when they're speaking to clients, they're speaking to deals, it's not the CV sourcing aspect, it's
No,
not the administration aspect.
no.
All of the time that they're spending on that, could they be spending on speaking to the highest caliber candidates?
Yeah.
Let's use this as an
Networking. Yeah.
networking. Let's use this as an example. Maybe two South African resources, maybe one, but let's call it two, could take away all of that time that that person does it. So they have 6 to 8 calls a day that are of the highest quality, candidate interested in the job, already engaged, interested, CV in their hand, ready to go to the client. Six
Wow.
to eight of those a day instead of 1 to 2, 2 to 3, because they've had to do all the heavy lifting
One.
at the front end.
On
Now,
the
what
front
I
end.
would also say to that is don't then underestimate your South African sources and resources, because what companies will find is that they are capable of more than just the CV source and CV
Yeah.
sift.
Mm.
They can talk to clients, they can engage, they can get interview feedback, and a senior consultant can just monitor all
Yeah.
of that. I'm not saying it happens from day one,
No.
but once they get up to speed, and what you'll also find is that South African candidates will take jobs that might be CV sourcing,
Mm.
enter a UK company and join a UK company, regardless of size. Doesn't need a big name behind it, but it looks great on their CV.
Yes.
And they will step back from what might have been a 360 role in order to do that
Mm.
fundamentally from the entire role. But they'll step into that role, give them the opportunity to do a bit more with your clients, and that
Mm.
really start when it starts paying dividends.
Absolutely, and that's where the magic happens. To me, that's where we've almost over the last 20 maybe 30 years actually, we've made this whole industry so complicated in what we're doing. But if we're looking at where we're heading, I think it's much more human to human interaction, relationship led. So all the bits that make it complicated, this is where for me, this is where this sits really nicely. Um, you're an entrepreneur. You're somebody who's quite visionary. Where do you think, if we look at the next 5 years, who knows, we can't say 10 years, but 5 years, what do you think recruitment founders should be thinking about now in terms of investing and in terms of their plans for growth and scale?
Not £40 an email.
No, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, but it'd be there by then. Where should they be going with their
Mm,
investment? I think that diversification for me has always worked, because one market becomes hyper tough.
Yeah.
As we've seen over the last few years, what's kept my recruitment businesses alive is being able to step out the box and saying, right, we are going to pivot, not 100%, but we are going to pivot into new areas. So
Hmm.
the biggest areas right now are AI, health tech, ad tech. They're all enormous industries.
Yeah.
There are plenty of opportunities. So I would potentially look at diversification if I was looking to invest
Mm.
in new areas. But also, we're here to talk about South Africa, right? And I've
Mm.
got a bias towards South Africa, but I would be investing in diversifying my force of my workforce, because when tough times hit, as they will inevitably
Yeah,
again,
of course they will. Yeah, yeah.
some say there's a recession coming by the end of the year. Who knows, with world leaders, what they're up to these days, what might happen. But I think planning and preparation and being able to diversify into new areas, whether that's UK or South Africa, being able to grow new markets and drive forward when everybody else is staying stagnant or
Yep.
falling out of the market, which is bound to happen again. We've already had one round of it. I think there might be another. And also having the opportunity to lower the cost of your workforce
Right. Yeah. It's that.
by looking outside the UK. If I look at
Mm.
my businesses, I've only now got about 4 people onshore. Everybody
Wow.
else is out of South Africa.
Wow. That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just a
I'm
total
close, right?
transformation.
So, I see all the best people. There is an opportunity there, but
Mm.
it's a big transformation given that 4 years ago I had 35 people based in the UK out of two main offices that were costing me a fortune.
I was just
All,
about to
all
say,
all those overheads are now gone.
yeah. Gonna say, can you imagine if that was the case when the Labour put up the national insurance and PAYE and the cost
Yeah.
per employee? I mean, that's the reality. That is where we're at, isn't it?
And that's kind of why people are being driven a little bit towards us as a
Definitely.
provider, because if you look at all of the associated costs to hiring a UK employee now,
Yeah.
taxes, NI,
Yeah.
office costs,
Yeah.
cost of
Yeah.
an office cost went physically down. Who got a
Mm.
reduction in their rates last year?
Yeah.
Everything goes up.
Everything goes up.
Yet the percentages we're still working on as recruiters still remains the same. Salaries haven't gone up in a lot of markets a lot
Mm.
recently. Yes, there are in some of those key ones that I've just mentioned, but
Mm.
ultimately a lot of the market is fairly stagnant in terms of salaries. But everyone's costs have gone up 20%.
Absolutely. So you're making less money, guys.
Making us
You like to invest in startup founders. What do you tend to look for? Like, if I've got someone listening to this who is employed, maybe you when you were at Robson Taylor, possibly thinking I can do this. What do you think their traits naturally should be, if there is such a thing? And what would your advice be to somebody that's thinking of going for it on their own?
I think it's about thinking outside of the box. So you've got your status quo, you've got what everybody else does, but where are the new ideas coming from? Where's the thought process? And I'm not talking about reinventing the wheel, but actually just
Mm.
thinking like, what could I do differently if I'm going to go and make a new market, or I'm going to go and create opportunities somewhere. I don't just want people that are going to go into their existing client base and do the same thing over and over again, non-competes and all of that. It's just not attractive.
Yeah.
What you want is people that are thinking about something new, thinking about a new direction, thinking about where they can go potentially and do that others that they have been close to haven't gone before. But also that it's
Mm.
the mindset of what pushes you through. And I'll give you a bit of a kind of personal story. Like in my early days, I was quite financially driven.
Okay.
At the end of my first year, we had call recording and all those things back, even back in those days, or call stats. And at the end of my first year, I worked out how much I'd earned and how many calls I'd made. And I worked out that every call I made, whether they said yes or no, or didn't answer and I left a voicemail, was worth £4 to me.
Wow.
£4. £4 in 2008. Quite a lot of money just for picking up the phone for somebody to say no to you. But the law of averages says that I got enough yeses out of that
Yeah.
to push it forward. So when I'm speaking to people, I'm looking for that like the work ethic that
Yeah.
sits behind it. There might not be the money motivation for me was I wanted to buy a house. Like I had a goal. It wasn't just
Mm.
I want
Mm.
cash out in my
Yeah,
pocket.
yeah, yeah. You
So
have to have a goal.
you have to have a goal. So that drove me in that next year to really push forward. And it took me 2 years then to buy the house that I wanted. But on the dark days when no one's saying yes, and you've made 60 calls and you think, geez, I just got to make a cup of tea now. They're the kind of attributes and traits that push people up and
Mm, uh,
through the hard bit. And the hard bit isn't sending
mm.
another 50 emails, it's picking up the phone and making something happen.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because everything that you're saying now, I couldn't agree more. I don't think I've ever measured how many calls I was doing when I was doing that brutal outreach job. I think the issue that we've got is that over the last sort of 5, 6 years, certainly since the COVID boom, and then obviously it all bust, but in that boom period, you didn't really have to do that. You didn't have to work for it. So of course, if you don't have to work for it, it's like waking up with a six pack or something, and then all of a sudden not having the six pack. Like, well, how did that happen? How did I
Yeah.
get it in the first place? So I've never had a six pack, I just like to say.
No, me.
Um,
But I
I'm
think
just using that as an analogy, but it's a good analogy because it's like you didn't know what made the phone ring with those people. You have to thing is the reality is the market is the way it is now. I can't see it going back to the way it was in 2022 where the phone rang and you didn't have to do any work. So I
I,
love
I
that that's
think
what you've talked about,
I
work
think it will
ethic.
at some point, because we said the same
Mm,
thing in 2008, 2009,
yeah.
where there was a real period and a
Mm,
real right period where
mm,
nobody was really doing much. But we all came back from that. 2011, 2012, 13 were all great years. And then we just
yeah.
go through a cycle. So those times will come. If you're in it now, don't panic. In my personal opinion, the phone will ring again, but
Yeah.
also it rings because you've got a relationship from the hard times.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. But I always say it as a caveat when I'm speaking to potential future founders that, if you're somebody that isn't prepared to put the graft in, equally, you're trying to create whatever your purpose is, whether it's value financially, whether it's freedom to, spend more time with your family or whatever it might be, that all those things are right. There's no right or wrong, but you are going to have to work really, really hard,
yeah.
and I think it's
And
this perception that you won't, but you do.
again, I'll use another example within my technology business. I've got a client. We first took some jobs on in June from them. Um,
Mm.
and I said to her on that call, she said, it's an impossible job to find, James. It is impossible. And I said, I will not quit. That is the one thing. If we've got a job, I won't quit until it's filled. I know it's a fillable job, by the way, client, all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
metrics you'd want for it to be
Points of commitment. Hmm.
commitment, fillable job. Now, have I placed that job? No, but I've placed six other people within that business since
Right.
on 150 to 200K plus salaries. So I don't quit. I've still got that job on our desk as a recruitment agency in the tech field. We are close to filling it, and we
Nearly there.
we will fill it. They didn't expect it to be filled overnight. They'd had it open 2 years. But the
Mm,
relationship and not quitting has led us into
yeah.
other avenues and all these other businesses that they own, which
Mm.
is enormous. So don't quit.
Don't quit and don't be transactional. Because if
Yeah.
you'd have been a transactional recruiter and gone, I haven't got anybody, bye. Whereas instead, you've created other options, which, like you say, I mean, it sounds like it's been a very mutually beneficial partnership. And I'm sure when that very niche tech spec
Yeah.
person comes along, do
Yeah.
they not exist at
And
some
I
point?
would also say that every relationship that I've now had for 5, 10, 15 years started with a phone call. I can't
Mm.
think of one that started with an email or a
Oh, God.
LinkedIn
Absolutely.
approach or mass mailing
Mm.
or anything like that. I can't think of one.
No.
So if you
No.
want people to come back to you, it's the personal and make the effort to go and visit them, go and meet them.
Yeah. Get a nice pair of trainers on.
You like
Oh,
those?
James, I do. I do. I like anything like that. Lily would love them. Thank you so much. And we've covered quite a lot there, really. But I like my episodes to be succinct, and I would like to think that whether you're listening as a recruiter or a leader, you're going to take something away from this. Contact information if anyone is interested in exploring how remote hiring through your business Flink South Africa, they'll get in touch via LinkedIn and make sure you mention the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. Have you got any final words before we say goodbye?
No, anything that anyone that does reach out or anyone that is interested, I don't run a pushy sales cycle.
No.
If you just want advice or you just want to talk about it, reach
Mm.
out. We'll have a chat. If it's for you, great. If it's not for you, also great. if it's
Also
going to
great.
be in 2 years' time, at least we're on each other's radar. So have the
Yeah.
conversation. I'll share all the information I can, then you can make an
Thank you.
informed decision. And anybody that reaches out, obviously off the back of this podcast, we will have a reduction on the setup fee for you as well.
Ooh, you heard it here first, guys.
So
Thank you, James.
just mention Lysha on it. We'll sort you out with something positive.
That's really lovely, and thank you. And then, you know, you're a man of integrity. We spent a whole night together. That sounds really wrong, doesn't it? At Liz Brennan's wedding,
We did.
and it was so wonderful with your lovely wife. I really enjoyed your company. So that I'm personally vouching for this man. He's full of integrity. James, thank you for giving us your time and your insights, and you are a wonderful man. Thank you for joining us on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast.
Thanks, Lysha.